So this morning, we are going to be dealing, and next Sunday, with anxiety. And we're not here to tell anyone you're a bad person if you struggle with anxiety or fear or worry, because we all do. We all do, okay? And it's not that we're going to make it disappear, but how can we deal with it in a way that's healthy and godly, okay? That's what we are going to be looking at today and next Sunday. And, you know, we do have a lot of stressful things that do go on in our lives, don't we? For each of us personally, whether that's involves work or family scenarios that we have to deal with. Finances can be a source of anxiety, or any of a number of other things. I mean, will the boss be happy with my performance today, or will I be let go? I don't know if that ever plagues anybody. When will I get a raise? Or if you have a business, will I be able to make payroll this month? I don't know if anybody is a business owner here. That sometime, especially during this quarantine, has been an issue. How am I going to pay for this unexpected bill that just came in the mail? Oh, no. Rats. God, how am I going to cover the kids' expenses at school this year? Am I going to be able to do that? Okay, or get the kids going to turn out all right? Or, you know, these are some of the ordinary everyday things that we face. We also face bigger issues at different seasons in our lives. How are we going to take care of mom and dad as they age? That can be a big question. I know some people in our congregation are dealing with that question right now. How am I going to take care of my aging spouse who's already battling this particular health issue? If I'm on my own, even, will I have enough to meet my needs? And if I don't, will I have somebody around for me if I'm alone? Right? These are some of the things that we have to deal with that go through our mind and that will nag at the back of our minds and create that uncertainty, that sense of anxiety, right? And even if you weren't wrestling with a lot of personal anxiety at the start of this year, guess what? Right? For all of us, the pandemic, the riots, shaky economy, the elections coming up, we have plenty on our plate right now. There's a lot going on in our world that can arouse that sense of anxiety, that can turn to fear, okay? And so let's just be completely honest right now, right here at the start, that we all deal with anxiety to some degree, period. Can we agree with that? Yes. That's just a reality. None of us are exempt from it. And so the real issue comes down to how we deal with it or don't deal with it. And while your anxiety or your worry or your fear may not look exactly what I'm about to give you as an example, we all deal with it. And here, let me give you an example of what fear, anxiety, leading to fear and almost a panic attack can look like and what it can do to you. I have a few phobias in my life that I wrestle with. Many of you know I hate needles. That is one of my phobias, and it's totally illogical. You get a needle around me, and I just get that. They give me the heebie-jeebies. That thing will some way find its way into my body and break off and start hemorrhaging, and I'm just going to die, okay? It's totally illogical. I understand that. I have a hard time dealing with it. So when I was in the emergency room this past spring, and they had to stick that stupid IV in me, you can imagine how I was feeling. I was about ready to climb the walls. But anyway, a different phobia I have is I have this fear of heights, which I think is a healthy phobia. That's a healthy one. And so I love to climb mountains and rock climb, which you'd think, why? Yeah, because I got into that stuff to try to beat it, which is fantastic, except I soon realized that every first climb of a brand new season, guess what? That phobia wasn't gone. I had to deal with it again all over until I conquered it, and then the rest of the climbing season was good, okay? I had conquered it, but that first climb of every year was the worst. I had to deal with it all over again. And I know I've shared this story before, but I want to share it for those who haven't heard this and with a different perspective of here's what fear can do to you. Some of you might recognize this in your lives over different things. I remember the first time I ever went rock climbing. I wasn't actually out on the rock wall. I was in a gym. This was in Chicago when I was youth pastoring there. My buddy, who was my college roommate, he was out there youth pastoring too. He says, Randy, I found this great climbing gym. We got to go do it. He was from Montana here, and we were all excited. It was called the South Face is the name of the climbing gym. And so we got in there. We went through all the safety protocols and everything, and he climbed a route. And then it was my turn. He got on belay. He got the harness and the rope all hooked up, and he got me hooked up. And so I got ready, and when I heard those words, climb on, I started climbing. This was fantastic. It was great. I've been dreaming about this all my life. Got my good buddy down here that I can trust. He's going to take care of me. I'm going to be perfectly safe, and I'm climbing, working hard. Finally, and it was about a 30-foot wall. This ceiling, I think, is about 24. So it's a little bit higher than this. So just try to imagine, for perspective, add another 6 feet beyond this, and you'll get an idea of how high this wall was, okay? It was a cement floor, too, okay? Does that help comfort everybody? Yes. Paint the picture a little bit more. So I got to the top of this first climb after struggling my way up. I tagged those carabiners like I was supposed to do, and then I made the stupid mistake of looking down. Whoa, baby. That floor was a long ways away. And guess what instantly happened? My heart started racing. This fear leaped into life. My heart was racing. My blood pressure went through the roof. I started sweating, and it wasn't just running through my hair that I had at the time. My palms were getting all sweaty, okay? Instant fear and instant sweat. And when you're rock climbing, that's the last thing you want. You cannot have sweaty palms. You just slide right off the rock, right? That's why we carry those chalk bags. And so my palms start sweating as I'm just desperately clinging to these holds for dear life, okay? Anybody recognize these sort of symptoms? You've experienced them, haven't you? Yes. This is anxiety at its worst. I couldn't think clearly. My mind is all of a sudden all kinds of places thinking I'm going to die, things like that, okay? I suddenly doubted my belayer, who was my good friend, whom I knew I could trust, but I suddenly lost all faith in him because he was down there talking to my other friend. He wasn't watching me, right? So the moment I knew what I had to do to get down, I couldn't climb down. I had to let go of what I was trusting in for dear life and sit back into that harness and trust that the rope had me, the carabiners were going to all be firmly implanted and stay there, not pull out. And my belayer down there was not going to let that rope slide right through his hands. And he's sitting there talking to my good friend, the other friend who was there. So I'm thinking, my idiot friend. So I'm yelling, Todd, look at me. I'm ready to come down. He's going, yes, I see you. Come down. No, you don't get it. Look at me right now. And he's just going on talking like he's not paying attention. I became paralyzed, literally. That's what fear did to me. I couldn't move. I couldn't function properly. And all I could do was just cling to those holds for dear life, okay? Does that kind of paint the picture of what fear can do to us? What anxiety, if we allow it to run amok in our lives, can do, okay? Well, guess what? We may not find ourselves in this exact same physical condition, but emotionally, relationally, maybe financially, or spiritually, we may feel the exact same way at times. And this is just a picture of what can literally go on within us when anxiety hits us. So this morning, we're going to look at the symptoms of anxiety and really dig down deep to identify what the real root cause of anxiety is. And then this will set us up for next week and how we deal with it in a healthy and godly way. See, anxiety will always be an issue in our lives. And why is that? Because we live in a broken world. It confronts us every day, right? We are broken people affected by our broken world, okay? So we're not looking to eradicate it and remove it from our lives because we cannot while we're in this world, okay? But we can learn to deal with it in a healthy and biblical way and then beat it. It will not control us. It's kind of like when we're tempted to sin, and I'm about ready to turn it over to you here, Jimmy. let me just put it this way. Is being tempted a sin? Is it a sin to be tempted? No, not one bit. Even Jesus was tempted, right? It's not a sin to be tempted. The sin comes if we respond to the temptation, right? We give into it, okay? Well, it's the same sort of principle here, okay? Not that anxiety, I'm not going to call that a sin, but it's always present, and we have to deal with it, okay? So what we want to address is how we deal with it. So then with God's help, we can beat anxiety. And so to help us further, I'm going to turn it over to Jimmy, even though I'm experiencing a little anxiety right now. I'm joking. We're trying to keep it short today because we do know we have a barbecue right after this. But Jimmy, would you come and share? And thank you so much for being willing to share your expertise. How many, is it 32, 33?
34.
34 years now that you have been in the counseling ministry and actually have been a Montana licensed drug and addiction counselor, working in boys' homes and working with families and all kinds of people. So thank you so much for sharing your experience and your knowledge with us. So thank you, Jimmy. Would you welcome Jimmy?
Amen.
Oh, that's right. You got it.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much. And actually, I went back to work, and I'm in. Thank you. I'm in the first week of my new job, and I got hired by Recovery Centers of Montana to help reconstruct their program and try to get the program in state accordance and provide good quality care. And of course, my entire career has been focusing on adolescents. So this is going to be a new adventure because it's going to be for adults and focusing with men that are coming out of prison or about ready to go to prison and stuff. And so I'm really excited because it kind of reminded me a little bit about, you know, the disorders and of course before somebody is qualified to go into a 3.5 inpatient treatment program, they have to meet a certain criteria. And the criteria oftentimes is when they have to be diagnosed with a disorder. And the disorder is, sometimes it sounds pretty freakish. I have a disorder. My name is Jimmy. I have a disorder. You know, it's that stigma of having a disorder. That means that there must be something wrong with me. But when I really take a look at a disorder, it's very simple, and because when I think of a disorder, I think about a messy room, and the room is cluttery, and the room is upheaval, and there's things all over the floor, and it's literally a mess. But what's good about something being disorderly is the fact that it can go back in order. We can put it in order. It doesn't necessarily need to be in a mess all the time. And so what happens is that because it's upheaval and there's a mess or whatever, doesn't mean that I don't love God. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad person because I struggle with a disorder. And oftentimes what happens is because it ties into a stigma that if I'm struggling with something, then that means that I must not have faith enough, or I must not trust God enough, or I must not be spiritual enough. And so oftentimes what happens is that that's what really kind of keeps us from asking for help. In the midst of our disorder, and we understand that we're living in a mess, but it's important for us to present ourselves in a positive, favorable light. It's important that the Joneses perceive me as though I'm spiritual and everything is okay in my life. And what happens is at that point, then I miss out on the opportunity to ask for help. And even though Christ understands where I'm at, we cannot hide from God. Adam and Eve hid from God. They ate of the fruit that was commanded them not to eat, but they ate. The Bible said that their eyes were open, and the Bible says that God was walking in the cool of the day in the garden, and yet they hid. Adam and Eve hid instead of coming out and meeting God. They hid because I'm sure that they felt a sense of anxiety, a sense of shame, a sense of, oh, you know, I did something that was forbidden of me. And what happens is instead of coming out and saying, Lord, here I am, instead of reaching out and saying, I need help, I'm struggling with this mess. I'm struggling with this mess. We hide. Get this, saints of God. We hide instead of asking. And that's exactly what Satan wants us to do. Satan wants us to hide, because hide literally means that I am disconnecting myself away from God, but God still knows my name. I literally shy away from fellowship, but God still knows my name. I disengage myself and I begin to isolate myself because I think that there's something wrong with me. And God forbid if there's something wrong with me, because that means then there's something wrong with me. That means that I'm not good enough. That means that I can't measure enough. That means that I can't do what I want to do because my anxiety is all of a sudden taking over in my life and is literally crippling me to the point where I begin to isolate myself. And that's the reason why when you have a hamburger, that's the reason why when you have one of those good cheeseburgers, that ketchup and mustard go together. You're probably saying, Jimmy, where did that come from? Well, let me tell you, that's the reason why anxiety and depression go hand in hand. He was saying that when he experienced anxiety, he was also experiencing depression. Because then all of a sudden, because I'm experiencing anxiety and it literally paralyzes an individual who is struggling with this. Because people that struggle with anxiety oftentimes really don't see a way out. They're literally living in this small kennel, this small cage, and I want to be free. I don't want to live like this anymore. But I don't know how to do it. But the insanity part of it is that sometimes we believe that we can cure ourselves. Sometimes we think that we can do it all alone, that we don't need help. When in reality, the more that I was looking into this, it was so alarming and so shocking to really realize the severity of the anxiety that individuals go through. There was a study that was done by CDC June 24th through June 30th of 2020. Just happened. And they did a study with 5,000 people. And the study was so alarming that literally 25,000 people suffered with anxiety. 13% of those individuals had suicidal ideation, or those individuals attempted suicide because they felt like they didn't have no other option. From the ages of 13 to 24 years old, 13% of those individuals used mood-altering chemicals in order to try to help with the anxiety disorder. But it literally caused more havoc in their life. When Pastor first came to me and said, I really want to teach about anxiety, and I think that we really need to cover it with, I was right there with him because of the severity of anxiety that we experience. Within that study, they were saying that the suicide rate was so high within this decade. And they associated that with the pandemic. That they were worried about money, that they were worried about dying, that they were worried about a lot of different things, and although sometimes those thoughts are irrational, they're irrational belief systems, yet those individuals who struggle with anxiety, those are real to them. And the first thing that an individual needs to come to terms with is the fact that they need to admit the fact that I do struggle with anxiety. I do struggle with anxiety. And this is the most important piece to addressing a problem, is to admit that I have a problem. And I find, it's interesting, but I find that within the Christian circles, that it's very difficult for them to admit that they have a problem. It's okay. It's okay. And Pastor was talking about all of us. All of us have a commonality. All of us have experienced anxiety in some form or another. But what is it that we're going to do about it? I want to challenge us here this morning that if we're sitting here and we're saying, yes, I do struggle with anxiety. Yes, I do sometimes have trouble getting out of bed. Yes, sometimes I do have struggles getting out of my house. Yes, sometimes I do have struggles with day-to-day functions. Yes, I do sometimes worry to the point where it literally paralyzes my thought process, and I begin to really think irrationally about different things. But I want us to understand that you're not alone. You're not alone. And the fact of it is that I love that song, that Jesus knows our name. We may be right in the middle of a mess, but the good news is the mess can be cleaned up. I can't put things in order, but I need to understand that I can't do it by myself, that I do need the help of others. I can't forget that God is there, and if I ask God for help, I know that He's going to be there, and He's going to help me. I know that if I tend to isolate myself and I shut myself away from society, I shut myself away from friends, I shut myself away, I shut myself away, yet God still knows our name. Yet there's still hope. Yet there's still hope. When I perceive myself to be in danger, or if I perceive myself that danger is coming and it's going to harm me, then what happens is that then I begin to make some real irrational decisions. Because it's human nature for us to protect ourselves. We go into self-protection. And we don't mean to be that way. We don't mean to be that way. But it just works out that way because it's important for us to be protected. All of us want to feel safe. And I get that. And I get that. That's why when these guys come into treatment, they come in and they're giving me all these facades and you know, they're machismo, they're bad, and they come in with attitudes and stuff like that. Really, what they're saying is, after we dig all of that anxiety and all that addictions and everything like that, and then they get right in the middle of a group and they're hugging me and they're crying for 10, 15, 20 minutes in my arms. Really, when they first came in, really what they were saying is that I'm scared, and I don't like to be vulnerable. I don't like to be vulnerable. So when I stand up and I say, hey, I struggle with anxiety. Hey, yeah, I struggle making friends. I struggle allowing people to come into my bubble. I push people away. I don't like to form meaningful relationships. I just like to do superficial because I really don't want to invest myself and everything. It's like we don't like to be vulnerable. And now we got the pandemic, we got COVID, and all of a sudden our nation is in turmoil, and all of a sudden, you know, they want to get rid of cops now, and all of a sudden it's like, man, you know, bad news after bad news after bad news. But as Pastor was saying, for us it's exciting news. But at the same time, what happens is that exacerbates, literally, it exacerbates the anxiety. It literally exacerbates the anxiety because it makes us more scared. It makes us more nervous. It makes us more anxious. And I need to understand. I need to understand that anxiety that I feel, I don't need to experience it every single day. I don't need to experience anxiety every single day, even though sometimes we experience being nervous and things like that, like Pastor was saying. We experience it. But we don't need anxiety to control our lives. You know what they say about misery? Huh? Oh, misery loves company. But really, I'm going to take it a step further than that. Misery is optional. I don't need to curl up and with a little cozy blankie with me and my misery and say, "Come, my misery, oh, I just love you. Come to bed with me." Because anxiety, because people that struggle with anxiety struggle with insomnia. It's hard for us to shut this thing down. Because the worry and the sometimes unrealistic fears that we're thinking about really sabotages our sleep. So then as a result, if we're not getting good sleep, then all of a sudden we're not eating well. And if we're not eating well, then all of a sudden then we get all kinds of physical ailments that's caused by that. And then all of a sudden then we're snapping at each other and we're more grouchier because, well, we're not getting the rest, we're not eating right, we're getting all kinds of physical ailments going on as a result. But I know that this sounds insane. But oftentimes what happens is people who have struggled with anxiety for so long that this becomes the norm. Even though they dislike how they're living, yet it becomes the norm for them because they don't know any other way. Well, what is it to have a peaceful rest? What is it that, what is it like to sleep for 8 hours straight or 10 hours straight? What is it that I can really sit down and have a meal and not even worry and enjoy life and enjoy and to be able even to be in the here and now, to enjoy the here and now. Pastor leaves me a very important message every time that I meet with him. He takes me home. He leaves me with an important message every time he drops me off. And you know what that message is? This is what he tells me all the time. He doesn't realize I pay attention to what he tells me. He says this, well, Jimmy, enjoy your day. Have some fun. That's my 30 minutes. So, and sometimes it's like, wow, you know what? I can have some fun. You know what? I can enjoy my day. You know what? I don't have to worry. But when we're struggling with the disorder, we actually learn how to live within the dysfunction. We learn how to live within the mess. That's why people who are hoarders, and I'm sure that we don't have anybody in this room that struggle with hoarding. We can go, in somewhere and it was like, wow, they got some stuff, man. and then those individuals that are actually living in it don't see nothing wrong with it, because that's how, they've learned how to live that way. Boxes in a box, you can't even find the front door because the boxes are blocking the door. But the thing about it is that, anxiety, those individuals that suffer with anxiety, and it's really true that anxiety is one of the disorders that's most treatable. It can be treated, but yet there's the other side of that coin where individuals really are trying to figure out, do I really do have a disorder? Do I really need help? Do I really need medication? Is it really affecting my life? And I tell you, this is one of the most vices that Satan has out there. You remember what John, in the book of John, it says the thief coming up but to kill, steal, destroy. He said, but I've come to give life and that more abundantly. And so next week, I know I and Pastor, we're going to be talking about more and what are we going to share next week? We're going to share something next week.
Yeah.
Something about something.
Next week, we got a bunch of scripture we want to dive
Yeah,
into.
yeah, yeah. We're going to talk about Scripture next week. I mean, we are coming into the house of God, you know.
Because one of the things, too, I didn't know if you wanted to cover this morning or not, but, and we don't mean this in a bad way, but really what's at the root of our anxiety and fear? Pride.
Yeah.
That is the root cause of it, because we take it upon ourselves. I have got to do something here. Something leaps up within us that I've got to make this situation right,
Yeah.
or how am I going to be provided for, my security, my family. And so
Yeah.
pride leaps in there, and fear comes to life because we take on the responsibility. Boom. Yeah. And all of a sudden, when we realize we're in over our head, which is normal, we're in over our head, I can't do this. I can't do this. And so then also pride will take us even further that I'm not going to reach out. I don't want to look bad.
Yeah.
I can't reach out for help. I don't want to look bad in front of this audience, whatever, and things like that.